To the big story from Russia that could affect just about everyone, from farmers all over the world to anyone who buys a loaf of bread. Russia is announcing a state of emergency in crop-producing regions and banning all grain exports. The ban will shut down wheat, maslin, barley, rye, corn, and flour exports from the world's third largest producer from August 15th until the end of the year. And the reason is drought and record heat that destroyed much of the country's crops and inflated grain prices by 19% in last week alone. The announcement today sent wheat prices here soaring to their highest level in almost 2 years. Joining us is Kenrick Jordan, senior economist at BMO Financial Group, where he focuses on industry and commodity markets. Kenrick, thanks for joining us. Let me ask you, first of all, interesting, a fellow Canadian, Dennis Gartman, today said this would be a big boon for farmers here in North America. You think that's the case? Are we going to see a record year for agriculture?
Okay, well, first let me just say it's nice to be here. I think what is happening is that prices of wheat and other grains have risen very sharply over the last month or so. Of course, this is going to be good for any supplier, producer, particularly in North America, that has supplies to go to the market. In the U.S., I think you are pretty well favored in the sense that the crops there are in excellent condition. In Canada, however, there is a similar situation, except it's the opposite. Instead of drought, it's very wet weather that restricted production in Canada. So to the extent that you are a producer and you have production, you would benefit from the higher prices. But some producers are going to be out of luck because that negatively affected their ability to plant, even in Canada. So some producers are not going to benefit to the same extent as others. By and large, in the U.S., you're going to be better off because the crops are in very good condition. Now, it's also important to sort of have a sense as to how long prices are going to remain high. And to me, that's a big question.
Well, you think that we are nearing the top here. We're at an all-time high, and you think there's not that much farther to go.
Well, if you were to make a comparison between where prices are now and where they were in early 2008, prices now are significantly below those levels. It is a fact that prices have risen fairly rapidly recently. But if we were to step back a bit from recent developments, there's quite ample supplies on global markets. If we were to look, for instance, at the ratio of ending stocks to consumption on a global basis, the forecast for the next year are such that the ratio is higher than the long-term average. And when I say long-term, I mean, let's say, for the last 10 years and certainly for the last 5 years.
Nonetheless, Kenrick, this will give producers this year probably an ample supply of cash to buy gear. So it would make sense to look into investments in, say, John Deere, who makes tractors, or fertilizer producers, and banks as well, which will gain from better loans. I mean, the industry will be healthier, do you think?
Okay, what is going to happen if these prices are sustained for any length of time, which would depend on how whether the impact of the drought in Russia is greater than is currently thought, then any industry that touches on grains, especially from a production standpoint and from an input supply standpoint, for instance, are going to benefit. So you're right. I think companies like John Deere is likely to benefit because high prices generally mean increase in production sometime later on. Other companies that, say, move the grain, ship the grain, or produce the grain would also benefit.
Do you think that this extends, though, to other crop producers? I mean, going back to Dennis Gartman, that was something he was saying, that there's a follow-on effect for soy, for corn, for other agricultural producers.
Well, of course, I think that's correct, because there's a link between crops, both in consumption, on the consumption side, and also on the production side. They basically, grains and oilseeds compete for land and other resources to plant it. That's the first thing. And on the consumption side, just as an example, corn and wheat are linked in markets, for instance, for feeding livestock. So livestock feeds, they are linked there. They are also linked in the production of biofuels.
What about, Kenrick, the economies of the countries affected? I mean, Russia, obviously. You also have drought in Australia that's affecting their wheat crop. How bad is this for those economies? We saw what happened to prices, for example, to wheat last week.
Well, to the extent that, well, certainly in Australia, agriculture is a fairly significant part of the economy, and there, of course, there are going to be linkages to other parts of the economy. So to the extent that output is down, I don't get the sense right now that Australia is going to be significantly down. But to the extent that output is down, it's going to have a knock-on effect on the economy, certainly in terms of output generated, and also possibly in terms of prices.
All right, hey, Kenrick.
The same would be true for for Russia.
Okay, hey, Kenrick, thanks so much for joining us. Kenrick Jordan there of BMO Financial. We're going to take